I took 3 bottles of Tylenol PM, but the moment of clarity, or the spiritual moment, was I woke up the next day like I'm sitting here right now. Nothing happened. Like the medicine didn't take any kind of effect at all. The guy that you fell in love with that is not the guy that you're going to get when I come back home. It's going to be a lot different. So I was a 30-year-old man with a 14-year-old mindset. I'm only 15 years old as a Christian, so I'm still in process. We were all judged on our worst day. We would never have the opportunity to show our best.
Impact some men today. I think we're going to do a great job. Men today are chasing success, but often feel isolated, overworked, and unfulfilled. Welcome to the Modern Man Podcast, where we connect men in pursuit of their potential. Join us as we embrace discomfort, cultivate community, and put wind in each other's sails. Now, before we jump into the episode, I first want to make sure you hit that like button. Hit that subscribe button and share this episode with someone else you know can get value from it as well. And to the men who are listening or watching, I encourage you to check out the Noble Knights Men's Group, where you can find the support, the accountability, and the mentorship you need to achieve your goals. I'm excited because we're getting some wind in our sails today from my guest, who is the founder of Recovery Vow, a nonprofit movement helping men rebuild their lives, marriages, and faith after addiction. Now 15 years sober. He serves on staff at his church, is the author of Marriage After Addiction, and hosts the Recovery Vow podcast, which reached over 3 million organic views its first year. A former addict turned purpose-driven leader, he focuses not just on sobriety, but on what comes after, reclaiming masculine identity, rebuilding trust, and stepping into servant leadership in the home. His work bridges recovery, faith, and family, helping men move from merely surviving to leading with integrity, consistency, and conviction. It is a pleasure to have on the podcast Eric Kennedy joining us today. Eric, it's great to have you, brother.
Man, what's up, Ted? Thanks for having me on the podcast. When I hear you read that, it sounds like I'm some global politician of some kind, and that is so far from the truth. But it sounded really good. So thank you for that introduction. I don't know who sent you that, but it sounded fantastic.
No, I appreciate it. But it is the work that you've done, and oftentimes it's unique to hear the accumulation of everything done in one paragraph, right? Where we know that there is a lot of years and struggle between the start to the finish. When we say 15 years sobriety, I'm sure that's an everyday fight. So if we can just jump right in at the beginning of the podcast and go there, man, and it's talk about the day you decided to become sober 15 years ago. What was going through Eric's mind, and what helped lead the man to who we see here today?
Yeah. Okay. So, man, I often get asked to go back to, 15 years ago and what that looked like, because it's totally different than today. I mean, like you mentioned in the bio, 15 years ago, looked nothing like this. I mean, didn't work for a church. I had maybe 5 shirts and 2 pairs of shorts and 1 pair of pants in the closet. Not that that matters, but I'm trying to paint a picture of what my addiction looked like. So if people hear this, they hear us talking, I want them to be able to close their eyes and be in that space with me, if you will. So why don't we talk about maybe the last month of my addiction, which will lead into the story of what I really enjoy talking about is recovery, because, everybody that we're talking to men specifically on your podcast. It's hard for us, especially when we have a past. We're not big talkers when it comes to sharing emotions or feelings or things like that. I still am not. We don't want to talk about being generational breakers because we may be ashamed of, our legacy, if you will, from fathers to uncles to even moms and, siblings and things like that. But I really enjoy talking about addiction because that's where, the rubber kind of meets the road and people share their stories. But what I really love about recovery is people get to see how people like Ted or Eric, kind of turn out, like what was in store for them, and they had no idea what was coming. And it's beautiful. Now you still deal with that life on life's terms, if you will, because things are going to happen. but now you have the mentality kind of walk through it, if that makes sense. So that last month, Ted, was it was intense. So I'm a father of 2 at the time, separated from my wife, and I was living alone in a small mobile home, probably the size of your computer monitor. I mean, it was that small, no kidding. I was addicted to crack. I drank about a half gallon of Canadian Club every day. I was cutting grass and checking water meters for a living in a small town where I grew up at. And, I had tried to hurt myself. When I say hurt myself, I mean, like, I tried to kill myself twice by this time. The first time I was living in it was almost like a shelter for abused women. I don't know how I sweet talked my way into that situation, but the two, they knew I was going to be homeless pretty much. And so this guy's name was Bill. He was looking out for me. He's like, look, you can stay here so you're not homeless, but there's 2 rules. You can't drink and you can't talk to the women. Well, talking to the women was going to be a problem. They were a lot older than me, and they weren't, attractive to me. They weren't. But I couldn't hold up the promise of no drinking. And the first time I tried to hurt myself was there in that room. Now, if the listeners, and if I can paint the picture of what that room looked like, picture a small bedroom with a set of bunk beds, and I slept on the bottom bunk was this room. I had a small college-style refrigerator in this room. I had a short little love seat couch and a TV. I had a toilet and a closet. And that was the room I rented from this individual. And man, I couldn't hold up the promise of, not drinking. That became my life. But when he found empty liquor bottles in the trash, he's like, man, you got to get out of here. And I was going to be homeless. And enough bad had happened by this time that I was like, I have no desire to live on the street. I had slept under a bridge before, because I'd gotten so intoxicated, I lost my car, and I just got tired of walking around Augusta one time. And so I remember sleeping under a bridge. But when Bill came in there and told me that, I planned to kill myself that night because I did not want to be homeless. I was not a good father. I was not a good husband. Wasn't a good employee, wasn't a good son, wasn't a good brother. I just was, I was pretty much, I felt like I was just useless. So what's the use of being here if you're useless? And, I remember going to one of the women that lived there, and I said, look, I got a headache and I want to go lay down and take a nap. Do you have any Tylenol that I can just take back with me, and I'm going to chill out for a little bit? And, I know this, I remember a comedian said at one time, if you take enough Tylenol, it'll be the last headache you have. I think it was Cat Williams. I can't remember, but I remembered that. And that was my plan. I'm like, I'm tired of the headaches. I'm going to go take this whole bottle. I mean, and she had like a Sam's Club size bottle. And I was going to just, take as much Tylenol as I could to just, I don't know if it's going to make my heart stop or what, but I figured if I drank enough with the Tylenol, it would just knock me out. Well, at some point, I mean, I was eating pills by the fistful. Like, you take 2 Tylenol for a headache. I was eating 10 at a time. I remember I probably got like 30 or 40. And, I don't know if I had drank enough of the liquor because I was trying to wash it down with the Canadian Club, and I always drink a Canadian Club with Diet Coke. And so I don't know if I'd gotten to a point where I got enough down and I just kind of passed out. But at some point, my brother called me, and he lived in another state. And I don't know how it all went down. I've never really asked them, but the gentleman I was renting from, Bill, I remember him, like I kind of came to and I opened my eyes, and Bill was standing over me, and he was trying to wake me up, and the ambulance was on the way. And this is, I'm sure people had done this, but I never experienced, but Bill had actually put his hands on me, and he began to pray. And I don't know if he was praying that I had received God before the death that he saw that was coming, or if he was praying for me to find God, and maybe he just knew I was going to make it. I really don't know. I hadn't seen Bill since that day. I don't even know if he's alive anymore. I've tried to call him. But the second time I kind of came to, I was in the back of an ambulance, and this EMT was doing what they call like a sternum rub, and they were trying to wake me up, and she was putting these ammonia tabs in my nose, trying to just bring me back to consciousness. And that did. It brought me back, but then I kind of passed back out again. And I woke up the third time, and I was in MCG, in the intensive care unit, and I was crying, because I had wrote the note. I had wrote the goodbye note to the kids. I had wrote the goodbye note to the parents. I even wrote, here's the songs you should play at my funeral, all of it. And I remember waking up in MCG, and I was in intensive care, and I remember what I remember the most about waking up there was I had an IV, and it burned because they were pumping potassium, like straight potassium, into my system. And if I remember right, that's supposed to like counteract Tylenol or aspirin or something. Mm-hmm. And of course, then my mom and my dad walked in the room, and I'm like 30 years old, Ted. I mean, I'm a grown child. I was released to my parents. I didn't have anywhere to go. So I went back and lived with my parents, and I became roommates with them at 30, and that didn't last long. I mean, it's hard enough to go back home, if you leave after high school or, college or something, but man, when you go back home at 30 and, you got a curfew, or if you can't make it home by this time, just stay out. That was one of the rules. And a lot of times I would just stay out. I would sleep in my car, or I would sleep somebody's couch or whatever. But the only thing I cared about was crack. And I did everything I could to support that habit every day. Because when I was released to my parents, I mean, that's when I got the little town or the little job in the town where I grew up at. I was, like I said, I was cutting grass and checking water meters. And I made it from the time that first suicide attempt happened. I probably made it about 6 months. And I attempted it a second time because I had got to the point where I was drinking so much during the day that people could smell it on me. Like at lunch, I would drink, and I would smoke crack in my little mobile home. And finally, the guy I worked for, he was actually the mayor of the town. He came and he said, "Hey man, are you an alcoholic?" And nobody had ever asked me that. Now I had asked myself that, if you back up years and years and years, I had called one other time for help. I was actually I know this sounds crazy. I was living in Alaska in a town called Ketchikan, and I started blacking out when I was drinking. And I thought it was because I was drinking brown liquor. I said, well, maybe if I drink vodka, it would, it wouldn't, it was stupid. I thought it would, your mind would be clear because it was a clear liquor. And that was my thinking, but that wasn't the case. They told me when you black out from drinking, it's because you've got alcohol poisoning. And so I never called for help again because I didn't want to think that I had a problem. I thought it was something I could manage. But fast forward back to this moment, I'm living in this mobile home. I had gotten 2 DUIs back to back. And in the state of Georgia, if you get 2 DUIs within 5 years, you have to put that device on your car. We have to blow into it to crank it up. And so I had that on the car, and it was just a miserable life. I mean, I would work all day long, and then I'd go try to cut somebody's grass or do something just so I can earn that extra $20 or $30 to kind of, because I was broke all the time. I needed it to support my habit. Because I was probably smoking about $600 a week worth of crack, if not more, and I was drinking about a half gallon a day at the end. But when the mayor asked me that, he's like, "Man, are you alcoholic?" And I was like, "Nah, like, why do you ask that?" And he's like, "Well, you're drunk right now. Like you're drunk. I mean, I can smell it. You can't even form a sentence." And that, I don't know if that just hit home with me so hard in my heart. I didn't even wash any laundry, Ted. I had a town uniform, the gray pants and the weird little button-up shirt,
Yeah.
And that's what I wore. When I got up, that's what I wore. That's what I wore. I wore the pants on the weekend and just a T-shirt. Like, I didn't care about life. I didn't care about what I wore. I didn't care how I looked. And when he asked that, I'm like, yeah, nobody's going to define me. I'm going to go ahead and end it. Like, for real, I'm going to end it this time. And I went to the local grocery store and I got some Tylenol PM this time. I'm like, well, this is really going to do it. And this is a spiritual moment. This really became one of the biggest spiritual moments. I've had several spiritual moments, but this was like a moment of clarity. I took 3 bottles. I bought the wire wool stuff that you make crack pipe with because I needed that too. But I bought 3 bottles of Tylenol PM in this wire wool mesh at the local grocery store. And I remember going back to that mobile home, and I looked around, and it looked very similar to the little room where I rented from that guy Bill. And it was a small mobile home, and everything that I had, the only things that I had left that I hadn't given away to my dope man, because if he needed stuff, I would make it happen. I would steal if I had to. If his kids needed toys and my kids had the toys they needed, I would give them the toys they needed. I mean, so it didn't take much to furnish this, but at the end, I looked in that room, I looked around, and I had the bottom of a military bunk bed. A cot was my couch. I had a queen size bed in the living room, and that's where I slept. That's where I ate. That's where I watched TV. And that was it. I mean, I gave away everything else. And when he asked me that, I tried to take those 3 bottles of Tylenol PM. But the moment of clarity, or the spiritual moment, was I woke up the next day like I'm sitting here right now, like nothing, like the medicine didn't take any kind of effect at all. Like nothing happened at all. And so I got up and I went to Dope Man's house. I love to use in the morning. It would still be dark outside. I hated daylight, and I hated to see the sun come up. And so I went and I was like, "Hey, bro, can you front me $60 worth, and I'll pay you back this afternoon. I'll cut some grass or something." And I had about a pint left, I think it was, of Canadian Club. And so when I left his place, I went to this spot that I like to use at, and it's off the beaten path, off a dirt road. You know, if you live out in the country, there's dirt roads, and so it was way off a dirt road. It was actually an old cemetery outside of the gate, and I pulled up and I smoked the crack and I drank the liquor. And this was the night after I tried to hurt myself, and I couldn't get high. I mean, I couldn't kill myself. $60 worth of crack didn't do it anymore, and I know it wasn't like cut that much. I mean, it should have done something. And I couldn't get drunk. I mean, I was just sober as a judge. And so I came back to that little mobile home, and I called into work, and I told them I wasn't coming into work. And I was laying on that queen size bed in that mobile home, and I called for help. Because I worked for the town in the state of South Carolina, I didn't know this, but I had pretty good benefits. I had what they call local state benefits. And so on the back of the card, I called the mental health number, the insurance, and called this place called the Watershed for Recovery in Florida. I told them my whole story, like way more than I'm kind of telling you, like a whole 15 years leading up to this moment, you know, because I started drinking and drugging around 13 or 14 years old. So from that age to 30 is about 15 or 16 years. Told them everything, even trauma from the past. And he's like, "Bro, you can fly down here today. We'll take you. Absolutely, we'll take you." I'm like, "Great, I'll pack up. I'll see you guys soon." But as the sun was coming up and I'd done called into work, the mayor that had asked me if I was an alcoholic, my mom, and 2 police officers showed up to that little mobile home, and they came in the front door, and they're like, "Hey, we know everything that's been going on. We've been watching you for, however long. And if I couldn't cut grass, say it was raining or something like that, Ted, I would borrow money, and that's called panhandling." And so I was borrowing money, and people started turning me in, over 10, 15, $20, because I wouldn't pay them back. And so I went to jail, and I said, "Look, I had this town provided this was cell phone, but I had a cell phone from the town, and they looked and they said, well, he did call for help, but I still went to jail for 2 weeks. And the judge, when she let me out, she said, you have 48 hours to call and get help, or we're going to send you to prison and just put charges on you that would they were going to try to scare me straight or whatever." And I said, "Look, Judge, if you let me out, I promise you I will get help." And I made a commitment to myself, like I couldn't kill myself. I couldn't overdose. I couldn't do anything that I wanted to do. And I wasn't good at anything else. And I said, I promise you I'll try this. And I had 48 hours. Now, I called that place back. And because I spent 2 weeks in jail, they considered that a detox, and they wouldn't take me. And I said, well, give me 15 minutes. Let me run the road. I'll be right back. I was going to go use and get drunk. I was going to call them back. And they said, no, it didn't work like that. So I called a few other places, and then I found this one place called Florida Center for Recovery. And I told them what had happened, the whole story, the jail story, and then, considering that detox. And I said, look, if you need me to use in order to get there, I'll do whatever it takes. At this time, I had, 2 little boys. They were still in diapers. And I mean, I wasn't doing it for anybody but for me. and they flew me down that day. No, I'm sorry, it was the next day because I was able to say goodbye to my sons. And man, I landed in Florida the next day. The last drink I took was in Atlanta at the airport. The last time I smoked crack was the day that I went to jail. And I put forth the effort. I spent 35 days in treatment. I learned all the negative. Like you can be the 90% of people that don't make it, or you can be the 10% that do make it. I dove into a 12-step program, working through that. You do the first 3 steps in treatment, and then when you get out, the world's kind of turned back over to you to figure out. Keep that part in mind because I'll talk about that in a minute. But when I got out, there was no plan of restoration with my family. There was no plan of restoration with my wife. There was no plan of restoration with my kids. I mean, they were done with me. I'd burnt that bridge, but there was a plan for living in a not assisted living, but I don't like saying halfway house, sober living. Let's say sober living house. And so I moved from Florida to Lexington and spent some months there. My first job in recovery was I was cooking and serving chicken at Wings and Ale in Lexington, South Carolina. I was living in this house with 12 other people trying to just fight to stay sober. Some weren't, some were. It was scary. I mean, it was, but I made a commitment just to make every day the best day that I could. Enough time went by. My wife that was distant from just being around, asked me if I wanted to try to work things out. I was like, yeah, let's try it. And I gave her kind of a fair warning. I'm like, look, the guy that you fell in love with that is the dad of these 2 boys is not the guy that you're going to get when I come back home. It's going to be a lot different. And I meant that in a good way. Like I didn't mean it to be intimidating, but I did mean it. And when I got back home, we made it about 9 months, and we realized that we were going to be better off as just friends. And so I filed for divorce, and I got full custody of Cameron and Christian. And that was the moment I realized that not only was I responsible for myself, but I was responsible for these 2 little boys. One was now not in diapers, but one was still in diapers. They were 4 and 5 years old. And I'm not saying that to downplay their mom at all. She's fantastic. She just knew that it would be better for them to be with their dad because she saw the work I was doing even at 9 months. Excuse me. And so we did. We kind of hit that life. I hit life reset button in treatment, and then me and Cameron and Christian kind of just stepped out in the world together. We lived in an apartment at first. They would go see their mom every other weekend, and I think on Thursdays in the beginning, and then for 2 years I did that. I worked a 12-step program. No, it was 1 year. I just continued doing that, and I would thank God for the things that I had in my life, but it wasn't like materialistic. It was like, okay, we're getting this, we're doing it. And this is kind of where it shifts gears a little bit, Ted. I got invited to church, and I didn't grow up in church. I'm not, I didn't knock it, but where I grew up at, it was small town deep in the South. So, I mean, it was like all Baptist, and pews, and I don't know. It just wasn't for me. And I got invited to this church by somebody that's in the program, and they said, "Look, you just need to try it." And I said, "Okay, I got 3 questions, and I'll try it. Do they speak in any kind of tongue? Because that freaks me out. Do they put their hands in the air, and are they going to have like snakes in a basket up front? I'm not doing any of that." And I meant it. But bro, when I went to church on Easter in 2011 to the church that I now work for, and I'm in the room, and it was the greatest moment of my life. I was covered with this presence of God like I never experienced anything before. Like I was in the room with all these other people, hundreds of people in this room, but it was me and the pastor. His name is Dr. Marty Baker. He's my boss now, but it was like we're the only ones in the room, and he was just talking to me, and he's like, you could hear forgiveness in that sermon. You could hear, higher power in that sermon. And I just cried. I cried like a baby. But I made sure that me and Cameron and Christian, we didn't miss a Sunday. We didn't miss a beat. So I started serving at the church. I made sure they were in kids' church. And we did that for a year. And then this little blonde caught my eye. And I got up the nerve to ask her out. And I hadn't dated. I mean, I dated, but I hadn't like really been involved in anybody since my marriage. But we had been divorced long enough that I felt like it was time for me to move on. And the Cameron Christian needed, they had their mom, but they needed another level of motherhood in their life that I couldn't provide with the time that they spent with me. I'm a really good dad. I'm a horrible mother, and so
I feel that.
We, you know what I mean? Like I can do a lot of things, but that nurturing vibe that they need from a female, they needed that. And so I asked this girl out, and I didn't tell her in the beginning that I was in sobriety or any of that. I told her like on the second or third date, but not like on the first date. Like I just wanted her to meet me and know me. And I told her about the kids, but man, we struck it and we started dating, and Kristen and I have been married now for 11 years. She gave me my 3-year chip. We have a beautiful little girl together who is about to turn 8 years old. Cameron is my oldest. He just graduated from high school. He's going off to college. He's 18, about to be 18 coming up, and Christian's 16. He's a junior in high school. So I spent these last 15 years growing up myself. Remember, when I started drinking at 13, 14, 15 years old, or using at those ages, that's kind of when my mind stopped working. So I was a 30-year-old man with a 14-year-old mindset. So over these last 15 years, I'm 46 years old now, but mentally, I'm just 30. As a Christian, I'm only 15 years old as a Christian. So I'm still in process. I'm still learning. I'm still just a real dude too. Like, yeah, I still cuss and I hate that. I mean, but I'm the guy on staff that's known for these kind of past and things, So, I mean, I don't like sugarcoating anything. I like to stay as real as possible, because people need that. They don't need you to sugarcoat things. They need to hear what you've been through, but they need to see how you're getting through, if that makes sense.
If iron sharpens iron, so does one man sharpen another. But if you're a man and you're alone or listening to this, then who sharpens you? What's going on, guys? Ted Phaeton here, host of the Modern Man Podcast, also founder of the Noble Knights Mastermind Group. And I'm just out here encouraging you to find your circle. Maybe you're on a personal growth journey and nobody around you understands the new mentality that you're possessing. That's okay. You can find an online community that will pour into you, will navigate your goals and navigate your obstacles, share their experiences, resources, and more. Join the Noble Knights Mastermind Group and try us out for free to tap into a community of men helping each other scale up and reach their goals. Check out themodernmanpodcast.com.
And I'm sorry, you got a question?
I was going to ask, when you lost grip of crack before getting arrested, through that the 2 weeks and the first 9 months of sobriety, what was it that you held on to instead of the crack, instead of the addiction? Because you said that you did everything you could to support that habit every day. But then when that was taken away from you, what was it that you held on to those first 9 months? For anyone who's starting their own sobriety journey, anyone who's looking to transition and hold on to something other than that habit, other than that addiction, what was it that got you going?
Yeah, I mean, that's an honest, really good question. So when I went to treatment, they had to clinically like help me detox. Like I had these vivid nightmares. I had these shakes. And so mentally, physically, clinically, I went through that in treatment. Now, when I got out, they gave me a plan of action for me to go to meetings and things like that, these different kinds of meetings, and hear from other people. And I did that. Now, there were certain triggers, like if I smelled like metal burning, it would remind me of that pipe getting hot. And I know that metal burning isn't everywhere, but think about like a muffler getting hot, you can kind of smell it when you walk around by the back of a car or something. It's just different little things like that. So I had triggers, but I had to empower the tools that I had been given. That now I'm a toolbox. Like all these tools, use the tools that you learn. People find sobriety in a lot of different ways. I may have found it by going to treatment. Some people just pray about it one day and like, I'm not doing it anymore. And it's cold turkey. Some people get it by going to church. Some people by, some kind of a spiritual experience or a different kind of higher power, as they understand and learn and grow. My life had to become the replacement for my life. Like, this life is you, but it doesn't define you. This life that you're finding out really who you are became, I really wanted to pour into that. And I just wanted to experience things. But it was difficult. Like I said, the curveball was, now you're responsible for not only yourself, but these two other people. And you can't go back to that. And man, there's times like I planned relapses. Like if something would have happened to Cameron or Christian in those first years of recovery, like I had planned it. Like if something were to happen, like physically, or if I'd have lost them, I'm using so I had to stop, don't have that stinking thinking is what they call it. And then just work whatever's working for you. So if you're going through a 12-step process, go through all 12 steps, use a sponsor. If you're going through inpatient or outpatient treatment, do the whole plan of action. If the judge has given that to you, or if you've been assigned that as a part of the task, people are just trying to help you figure it out, but it's not going to work unless you want it. So the person that's coming off of it, you have to want it, Hope that answers your question a little bit.
No, it certainly does. That journey can be intimidating and daunting for some who are ready to go on that and walk that journey. And I appreciate the breakdown and the history of the last 15 years and who you've become and who you continue to become, because you're right in terms of the authenticity you're showing right now is bridging that gap for somebody who hasn't had the courage to make that phone call themselves. So I appreciate you for that, yeah. Eric. And you mentioned something about with the 12 steps, first few steps through recovery, and then you were out on your own devices. You mentioned you wanted to elaborate more on that. I want to make sure to give you that opportunity to discuss that aspect of things, because I'm sure under supervision in the program, especially when you first start, the vibes are high, emotions are good, but then you go out into the real world and you mentioned the small triggers. And then life being life, right? Just the pest comes not in the first few weeks, but it comes when the routines, the habits, and everything goes back to normal. And then you get tested and something happens, adversity arrives. That's where the real test comes into play. So I'd love for you to talk on and speak on more of how navigating on your own devices, if that could maybe shed some light to anybody else who would be looking at getting some tools in their toolbox to endure.
Yeah, for sure. I like that you use the word test. You can't have a testimony without the word test. And everybody's got their own testimony. People are going to hear this and they may want to do a comparison. Oh, well, he hasn't done as bad as I've done, or damn, he's done worse than I've done. If we laid all of our problems on the table, I would probably pull mine back, because yours may be heavier than mine. But this isn't a measuring. This isn't a thing about measuring, right? This is about understanding that we all have problems. And we all have this work we have to do to get through these problems. Now, I talk about the 12 steps. These first 3 steps they help you go through in treatment, there's a reason for that. They want you to spend time on each step. So over the course of 4 weeks and 3 days, whatever it was like 35 days I was in there. You go through the first step with just admitting, I got a problem. You got to openly admit to yourself and really dive into that. And you do that with counsel, or you do that with another person or whatever, but you openly admit you got another problem. And then you became willing to admit that you have this problem. And then you become willing to admit that there's a power greater than you that will help you get through this problem. So those first 3 steps. Now, what they don't do in these programs is most are not faith-based. There are some that are faith-based. I think it's very, very important, whether you cuss a little or whether you still just trying to figure things out, people have to understand that God has got to be their higher power. For me, in the beginning, it wasn't. I didn't have a relationship with Christ. I didn't have a relationship with God. I thought I had to go ask for permission from Jesus just to talk to God, so I had no idea what I was doing when it come to that. I'm starting to understand that I was a spiritual person. I'm not a very religious person. Very, very involved in understanding the experience of church. But people matter, and if they matter to God, they matter to us. I learned that from going to this church and serving people. But those steps help because you go through those first 3 steps, and they're like your not your maintenance steps. They become like your work steps, and then these other steps are where you really dig into your life. So, like 4 is where you write out all the things you need to make amends to, become willing to make amends to these people. And I may get some of these messed up, but as far as the order, but writing down people that you hurt. You're not going to say, I need you to forgive me. You're going to say, I'm making amends, whether you accept it or not. I've got to get this off of my chest. And you dig up things from when you were small. So for some people, they're going to deal with some kind of a trauma when they were younger. Now, I'm not a psychologist. I've just learned this over working programs and being in recovery. A lot of people in addiction, they deal with something, maybe generational, maybe abuse when they were little, sexual, mental, physical, whatever. Sometimes for the guys, it's the connection to a father. Sometimes for girls, it's a connection to mom or dad. But there's something there. And then, you go through these steps, and if people miss a step, or they skip a step, or they don't spend enough time on a step, it really does hurt. And at the end of it, the last step is where you carry that message to another person. That's when you're able to pretty much, it should take about a year to go through all 12 steps. Some people can push through and get it done in 6 months. I really feel like it takes 6 to 12 months to get it done the way it's supposed to be done. And the reason I say that is because you need that real estate of sobriety before you can really go out and work with someone in their sobriety. Does that make sense? So I didn't feel like I could sponsor or talk to anybody until like 12 months. Now, I will say this. Once I got invited to the church and I found out that my higher power was God as I understood him, it can't be like a doorknob and it can't be like a TV or whatever. It has to be God as you understand him, and just walk in that relationship. I don't go to the AA meetings as much anymore because they not all of them, I'm sure. The ones that I was going to, they kind of shy away from you bringing the Jesus into it because there's a balance of being a crazy Christian, I guess. I don't know. I don't want to badmouth anything. What I do want to say is that once I found that relationship with God, it's like, man, it's like life just kind of catapulted. I don't know how to explain it. I just have enjoyed the ride for the last 15 years. Now, here at this church, every January and August, we do what they call 21 days of prayer. I didn't get it in the beginning. I didn't really understand how to pray in the beginning, but 2 years ago, I was like, okay, God, I need you to tell me, like, what can I do one day to leave a legacy? So this is kind of where I'm going to shift gears, if that's okay with you, Ted.
Yeah, please. I think you're leading right into my next question of how Recovery Vow came about, but take it away.
Okay. Yeah. So, I'm like, okay, I remember getting this book given to me. This church is made up of small groups, and so we're a church of small groups, and I wanted to lead a small group. I'd been in sobriety for 2 years by this time. Kristen and I had met. We'd gotten married. We hadn't had Charlie Kate yet, but we were living, together, married, and we were raising Cameron Christian. But I knew I needed to give back to the church above the tithe, lead a small group, and try to help people find recovery. Man, I started a small group called Time for Recovery, and we grew that group. Started 5 of us. By the end of it, it had over 1,000 members in that little group. And when I say 1,000 members, that was on like a little Facebook page we had, because we had these little chapters that popped up all over the state of Georgia and South Carolina, even in Arkansas, if I remember right. And the reason that took off is because I took this book called A Hunger for Healing. It was written by a guy named Keith Miller. And what he did is he took the 12 steps and he showed where the 12 steps kind of came from the Bible and how they were, talked about or built out from from when it originated. And I felt like in that way I was honoring 12 steps and AA and anonymous meetings, but I was also bringing Christianity into it. And so people just wanted that. I mean, some people just sought after that. And so We would do that group. And I was just volunteering at the church at that time. When I was asked to come on staff full time, they asked me to kind of turn that meeting over and let some other people lead it. And so I did that. And I really just dove into my work here at the church. And I've grown my role over the last, I've been here for going on 11 years now. And so I'm the operations director over all of our campuses and facilities. But over the last, decade, I've worked and just walked in recovery. And remember I told you, like, you really can't help people until that first year goes by. But when that decade goes by, I'm like, okay, God, what can I do? Like, what can I do legacy wise? Like, what am I going to do one day? And that book came to mind that we were reading through. I'm like, there's never been anything written to help the supportive spouse. Like for my ex-wife and I, it wasn't meant for us to be together, but marriage is, a lot of people want their marriage to work. And so I was in 21 days of prayer one morning and I said, what can I do, God? What kind of legacy can I leave? And he's like, God told me, he's like, and people say that all the time, like God spoke. It wasn't like verbal, audible, but it was through prayer. It's like, okay, maybe you should write a book, In my mind, I'm like, I'm going to write an autobiography of all this crap that I've done over my whole life, really, from start to finish. And I'm like, this is going to be a bestseller. Who wouldn't want to read, this life that I'm about to put down? And so I pitched this idea to a publisher through a friend of mine who had written a couple books, and they're like, this is great. People would read this, but you're not like John F. Kennedy. You're Eric Kennedy. So nobody knows who you are, and so it's not beneficial. What can you do that's beneficial? And then I went back to, there's nothing out there for spouses, not wives, wives and husbands, because there's females out there that have addiction problems too. And so I pitched the idea of writing a book to the supporting spouse of someone going through recovery. The original name of the book was called Recovery Vow, because if I'm in recovery, we are now in recovery together. When I made a vow or the commitment to myself to stay in sobriety, I now make a vow and commitment, just like on my wedding day. So I was trying to play off both those words. They didn't like that name. But they did like it enough to say, you ought to, use that as you brand. And so, I kept Recovery Vow, and under that brand is my book called Marriage After Addiction, Take Back Your Life Together. Now that book, Ted, is written as a workbook, and, it's my view of looking at the last 15 years of how I walk through recovery and how you bring your spouse along with you, kind of utilizing or an in-depth look at the 12 steps. But at the end of every chapter, there's questions you answer as an individual in recovery and as the point of view from the supporting spouse. And then you answer questions together. And then I tell you, they love that idea. And so XO Marriage in Dallas picked it up and they published it, helped me write it, helped me design the cover. And they came up with the name Marriage After Addiction, Take Back Your Life Together, which is clever because of all the searchable keywords in there, right? So it's on Amazon and the website. But I really did like Recovery Vow. And they said, you ought to consider doing a podcast. A lot of people are doing podcasts now. And that would be a way for you to get your message out and share, what's going on inside the book. But that was the original vision, and it still kind of happens, but the platform has become a way for people to share their stories. I got sober by hearing other people's stories, and we really level the playing field. I had Quentin Aaron from the movie The Blind Side. He's a big guy that played Michael Orr. Yeah, he came on the podcast. Now, Quentin has zero issues with addiction or recovery, but I used the podcast to prove that everybody's in some kind of recovery. He's in recovery because he was came from a household of a single mom and lived in some kind of poverty, And then we just had Jeremy Jackson on, who was on the TV show Baywatch. He's in real recovery. But then last week, we had a parents come on that they lost their son to he accidentally shot himself and he killed himself on accident. They are in a different kind of recovery. So everybody, if you really think about it, it doesn't have to be substance addiction or process addiction. We are all in some kind of recovery if you really dig into it. And people, man, they've lined up to come share their story. And so we now have this podcast, and the podcast has been around for a little over a year and a half. We have the book. And then I'm like, well, I want to start helping people on another level. So we started the Recovery Vow Collective, and that's where people can come and get coaching with me monthly. And all of this started happening, and I'm like, all right, we're a nonprofit in the state of Georgia. We have donors. We're building this legacy. We're getting emails from people all over the country. Really, we're reaching all over the world, and that's great. And I appreciate those numbers. But if we've helped one couple or one person, I mean, that's what I'm doing it for. So that's the legacy. So now I have this written word, like when I'm not here one day, that Marriage After Addiction will still be around. If I'm not here one day, maybe somebody takes over and they run Recovery Vow, and they're going to continue helping people through either the podcast or the coaching and things like that. I just like bringing a different visual to what recovery offers people. It doesn't define you. It empowers you to look at what your future could possibly look like. But I mean, I've tried to plan my future, and God's like, boy, get out the way. And he just puts these doors in front of me, and I just get to walk through these different doors. The most recent thing I've done that I'm really kind of excited about, and I didn't think it would be this fun, but we have our own line of coffee now. So we partnered with this group called Define Coffee in North Carolina, and so conversation happens over cups of coffee. People just love coffee these days, and so people will sit down and maybe they read the book together, or they'll sit down and have these conversations with their loved ones. I did get approved to write another book to the parents. So, a lot of times parents come, younger and older parents, and they're like, I need you to help my son or my daughter. They're dealing with all these issues. And I'm like, well, do they want it? Do you have insurance? All these regular questions. But the parents often fail in finding the balance between enablement and support. Mm-hmm. And they lose track of their own marriage. And so this book that I'm working on now will teach them that balance of enablement and support. And it's also written as a workbook. And then at the end of every chapter, they do these questions, but they are reminded that if you look at it from a spiritual standpoint, and I'm not a preacher, pastorally, I can help people. I mean, I have a piece of paper hanging on the wall that says, in the Church of God, I'm a bishop, but I don't like using that title too much. What I like showing people is that, there's God, and then your spouse, and then your kids. And there's a reason that it's in that order. If you get lost in your kids, you skip your spouse, you have to be reminded that your spouse is second in command, or second in line, however you want to look at it. And so I went back to my publisher and said, this is the book I'd like to write next. And so that will fall under the brand too. And so we're doing all these things, right, Ted? I mean, it's a nonprofit, but it's still a business. I have to go out door to door, and I make a joke about this all the time, but I feel like I'm panhandling still, because I go, knock on doors and try to raise money and get people to give us money. We do these golf tournaments, or we do these, these brunches where we try to raise money, and, look at what the God's done. And I feel like I don't know what I feel like. It's not a warm, fuzzy feeling when you have to go out and ask for money, but people do. They donate. We did really well last year in the nonprofit space to create funding, reoccurring funding from just people that can give $20 a month to people that give, $500 a month, which is fantastic. Yeah. And what they're doing is they're giving to people they will never meet, because maybe they're thinking about their loved ones. So when I go speak, usually I'll tell people to turn their flashlight on in the room if they're thinking about, someone that's in recovery or someone's in addiction, and the whole room lights up without saying a word. Because everybody knows somebody, right? And a lot of times these donors, they donate because they're thinking about other people that they want to help, and they're going to help people they may never meet, and that's the beauty in what we're doing. We're giving recovery a new face. It's a beautiful face too. Addiction is the dark, ugly stuff where the lights are off, and you hate seeing the sun come up. No good husband, no good dad, no good son. But the recovery is like playing a country song in reverse. You get all of that back. You get your house back, you get your wife back, get your dog back, get your kids back. But then you get this relationship with God that just catapults life to another level. And I say that very, very fluidly, because I'm still in process. Remember, I'm a 15-year-old Christian, so I'm not here to preach the word of God. I'm here to share what God did in my life. One day I'll get to that point where I can maybe on another level share it. But right now he's got me right where he wants me. On a podcast with Ted, talking about, the modern man and what we do to help each other.
Eric, man, I mean, everything you said, it's so true. And before each recording, I try and pull some research to be relevant to the discussion that we're talking to. And everything you said is backed by research in terms of sustainable recovery is strongly linked to developing a new positive social and personal identity, not merely just abstaining from substances. The faith-based recovery that you talked about, faith-based recovery program significantly improves psychological well-being, relapse prevention, and purpose perception. Your book about helping your spouse through recovery. I love that Recovery Vow, because now we're in recovery together. Studies show that couples who engage in structured communication and forgiveness practices post-addiction show greater trust restoration and marital satisfaction. And finally, that leadership piece, when you mentioned that it wasn't just you after 9 months. You had 2 boys to look after, but you also had others to follow. And it says mentorship and service to others in recovery reduce relapse risk and increases life satisfaction, reinforcing the value of leadership after sobriety. And I know we've come to our time with the podcast, but Eric, I have 2 more questions to ask. And I also want you to share some resources and links for the audience to go to. Number one is earlier on when you mentioned, I love that how you showed the eclipse from addiction to recovery. And I listened intentionally to your words because you said, I was not a good father. I was not a good husband. And then later on, when talking recovery, you said, I am a good father, horrible mother. We laughed on that. But those are 2 descriptions of the same man, complete opposite based on where you were in life. So what was it you found out about yourself from addiction to now recovery? Sorry to interrupt, guys. Ted Phaeton here. And if you're like me, then your day is planned up to the minute. You see, between work, working out, being present for my family, navigating 2 podcasts, and trying to scale my business, I don't have time to focus on what I'm going to be eating throughout the day. They're called Nutri meals. They're delivered right to my front door. All my meals are set for the week, and it fits my macros and provides me with the fuel I need to keep up with my training as I get ready for my upcoming High Rocks race. If you're busy and you're juggling and trying to navigate keeping up with training, work, and being present for your family, then I encourage you to take one thing off of your plate. That could be your nutrition. Check out Nutri meals and get 40% off when you use code MODERNMAN. Try out the meals yourself and let me know what you think.
The biggest thing is that you're never going to be perfect. I was not perfect in addiction. I'm not perfect in recovery. We just grow in understanding who we are as an individual. If I'm saying this the way that I want to say it, then my brain is like really turning. I could not grow, how about that, in learning more about myself, because if I could be the seed, the generational breaker, better, whatever, it's because I took time to invest in myself. I didn't take that time to invest in myself that healthy way before. I invested in time of how to get the stuff into my system that made me feel a certain way, and it goes away quick and I need it back quick.
Yeah.
You eliminate that and you're just dealing with the joy of life. I mean, I hate to say it like that, but you're dealing with what God's given you, and you find ways of enjoyment. And again, I had to say, like, am I perfect? My wife's decorating the house right now. And you would think we lived at the Biltmore. There's Christmas everywhere. I love Jesus, but I hate setting up for his birthday.
Yeah.
And we do it a lot. And I told her last night, I'm like, look, I'll help get this stuff stapled and hung up, but I'm not fluffing it. I just don't get into that. So, I mean, it caused a conversation to happen, and she wasn't happy, but we figure it out. We figure it out. So, these things are still going to happen, but I didn't have to go out and drink over it. I didn't have to go out and smoke over it. I didn't have to go out and, bum money off of somebody to go fix what I thought was mentally the right way to do it. I think later on I might have slapped her on the leg or on the butt or something. I said, you know what? We're okay. You know what I mean? Like, and at the end of the day, I actually got in there and did what she asked me to do.
That's how. But
I look around now, I remember, putting my hand on a rented apartment and on a beat up car that I could barely get around when I first got into sobriety. I was thanking God for that. And then I look around what I got now, and I'm not talking about material, but the blessing of what he's given us as we grow in a relationship with him in a relationship with ourselves, because there's a healthy selfishness that has to happen. You can't be anything to anybody else until you're, something for yourself. So I hope that kind of answers your question.
No, absolutely, man. Amen. And before I ask my last question, I first want to make sure folks that are listening, the audience, can connect with you, listen to the podcast, learn more about Recovery Vow, your nonprofit, everything you have going on, and continue to support. So what are some of the best links or resources for them to check out?
Oh, man. For the old people like myself, we're on Facebook. For that younger generation, we are on Instagram and TikTok, and our following's growing. Like again, I don't care about the numbers, but we're doing really good there. So you can reach us there. Of course, we have a website, recoveryvow.com. If you'd like to try our coffee and support us, you can donate through our website. If you'd like to set up like a reoccurring small gift every month, if you're thinking about somebody that you may never meet. If you'd like to try our coffee, you can go to recoveryvowcoffee.com. And you can select, we get coffee it's freshly roasted in North Carolina, but we get it from Guatemala, Peru, Colombia, and Kenya. So it's really good coffee. And yeah, I mean, if people want to email me direct, they can email me at recoveryvow@gmail.com. And I'm willing to sit and talk to anybody. And if they'd like to join the collective, that coaching platform, I think we charge $20 a month for couples, and you won't get a cheaper coaching or counseling service than that. But you go to recoveryvow.com and click on Join the Collective, and you can do that there. And we do a monthly Zoom call. We'll do one tomorrow, as a matter of fact. Yeah.
Nice. I
know this won't come out till March or whenever, but yeah, I appreciate that.
I know you'll still be doing the calls then as well, because it certainly is needed. And the last question, and it might be something that you've already touched on. Feel free to reshare it if it is. But what is something you've seen or something that's happened to you that shapes the way you view the world as a man?
Okay. This sentence was dropped on me a couple years ago. We had a member here that was causing some issues, and I'd kind of judged them in my mind. But my pastor, I don't know, and I put this in ChatGPT because I was like, where did he hear this from? But he said it. I don't know where he came up with it, but it's become my tagline. So it's on every email I send. It's on our website. You'll hear me say it more and more and more. But it was a line of truth, and it's, if we were all judged on our worst day, we would never have the opportunity to show our best. So I'll say that one more time. If we were all judged on our worst day, we would never have the opportunity to show our best. And that just levels the foot of the cross, the playing field, whatever you want to call it. It just makes Ted and Eric the exact same, because I can't judge you. You can't judge me, because we can't be judged on our worst day. We wouldn't have opportunity to show our best. So I hope that hits home with somebody else.
Amen. It hits home with me. I'll leave it at that. But founder of Recovery Vow, a nonprofit movement helping men rebuild their lives, marriages, and faith after addiction. Now 15 years sober, serving on staff at his church, author of Marriage After Addiction, and host of the Recovery Vow podcast, which reached over 3 million organic views in its first year. Eric Kennedy, thank you for still being here, man. I'm so glad you're still here.
Bro, appreciate it.
For the work that you're doing.
Yeah.
And thank you for authentically and just transparently sharing your story today, man. I felt it, and I really do appreciate it.
I'm so honored to be on your podcast and just be a part of the people you're reaching, the folks you're reaching. Your platform's massive.
I appreciate it, man. And I honestly can't wait to share the episode. I'm going to share just a couple notes I took along the way from your story, because I know a lot of folks are driving, sometimes working out or cleaning while listening. They don't have the ability to take notes, so I do it for them. But I mentioned before the contrast and description of self. I was not a good father. I was not a good husband. I felt useless. To the listeners, you're not useless. You have so much within you and so much to give, and you are still here, which means God is not done with you yet. I did everything I could to support that habit every day. When you take that energy and you shift it into something else, you can build an amazing life. What you're supporting right now might not serve you, but just watch out once you find what does serve you. Nobody is going to define me. It's the work that you do where you can define yourself and how you show up. I couldn't get high. We don't know what it was. It was the divine, whatever it was. There was a switch that day for you, Eric. And I'm hoping that the person listening who's going through their own struggle, their own addiction, that your recovery finds you, not in the form of incompetence, but in the form of revealing what is now next. I am a really good dad, but a horrible mother. Amen to that. I just wanted to share that again because it's just so true. But don't have that stinking thinking. Use the tools that's available to you and do the whole plan of action. See it through all the way to the end. And if we laid out all of our problems on the table, I would probably take mine back. That's so true for so many of us. It takes about a year to go through the 12 steps properly. Don't rush it, but embrace every single step. Go through it. I got sober by listening to people's stories. Is your story going to be the next one that you get to share? And we are all in some kind of recovery. That hit home. If you're listening to this, you're going through some type of recovery. It doesn't just have to be substance abuse. It doesn't just have to be a drug or website, a habit. What is the recovery that you're going through? And how are you finding support in that journey? And you are never going to be perfect. We just grow in understanding who we are. Guys, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Be sure to give Eric a follow. Find Recovery Vow. Let him know you found him through the Modern Man podcast. And if this reminded you of someone who needs to hear this, please share this with them, and let them listen to an amazing story, a transparent story. And if you can see yourself in this and you know someone out there that you want to support, and maybe you have them on your mind, maybe your best way to support them is by supporting Recovery Vow and someone who's doing the work and reaching folks where they are. We appreciate you guys. We appreciate Eric, and thank you for making it to the end. I'm going to ask that you hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, leave us a rating to let us know how we're doing. And as I always say at the end of the episode, everybody wants the sunshine, but they don't want the rain. But you can't get the pleasure without first the pain. Let's grow.